Grace Wanura, and this is Horse Pro, the channel dedicated to empowering the amateur horse enthusiast and supporting the budding professional. If you find any of today's information of value, please hit subscribe and the notification bell, and then you'll be alerted to any new videos that come up, which do come on a daily basis. So as promised, last Friday we had a question asking for the definition of a shamateur. So I did give a brief description of what a shamateur is in the hunter and jumper industry. So today I'm going to deal with it from the hunter and jumper side because I have not yet delved into it in the myriad of other horse sports, which I will do. I'm going to actually go out and talk to many of the professionals I know in the Western realm, the English pleasure Western realm, the barrel racing realm, the thoroughbred realm, saddle seat realm, dressage realm. I'm going to go ahead and do that, eventing realm, which I do know a little bit of, but I do want to talk to the professionals out there and get their opinions. So today I'm going to talk to you about the hunter and jumpers because, of course, having been a circuit coach for over 25 years and having run a successful show stable, I do have integral knowledge of this, and I continue to have integral knowledge because of all the clinics I do. So today it is what is the shamateur and the consequences of the shamateur on the hunter and jumper industry in North America. So I am going to be looking down at my notes a little bit here because I do have a few things written that I want to make sure I don't forget to tell you. So number one, a shamateur refers to someone that is above 18 years old that either receives gratuities, funds, or does the training, riding, or coaching job of a professional without declaring professional status. And sometimes people are doing this for no monetary gain. However, technically it still falls under the professional status. Juniors are excluded from being referred to as shamateurs, even though catch riding, catch training starts usually in the pony ring with many talented juniors. But they are excluded because juniors, because of their age bracket, can't be considered professionals till the day they turn 18. So that's why often, even though we're dealing with shamateurs, and we're referring to anyone, whether they're under 18 or over 18, technically the shamateur would be over 18. So basically, we have to think about this from a perspective of what the different job descriptions are of the shamateur, where the different uses come, and whether it's negative or positive for the industry. Now, as we all know, hunters are in the regular division, whether it's a children's division, whether it's a junior hunter division, adult amateur division. In these divisions, you do not need to own your own horse, and the points are attributed to the horse when a placing is earned inside a division. In the adult amateur owner, 3'6" hunter division, you do need to own your own horse. So catch riding there by a shamateur is excluded. In the other divisions, in the myriad of divisions, often if a horse is lacking in points, if a rider injures itself, if the person who normally rides a horse injures themselves and they cannot ride for a certain period but want to keep the points up, often they will have a catch rider step in. So is this catch rider a shamateur, or is this rider just a catch rider? So the big problem here is when you have somebody step in to ride the horse, sometimes it's to gain points on the horse, sometimes the horse is for sale, and a trainer will need a junior record or an adult record on the horse because it only has a professional record, and they need to prove for the client who owns the horse that it's worthy, and maybe that client doesn't have a child or doesn't ride themselves. So someone is asked to step in to ride the horse. Now, of course, you're going to choose the best rider you can. So this person sometimes has gotten to the level they're at through skill, through riding lots of ponies for people, coming up through the junior ranks in riding. And after they turn 18, they may themselves be at university. They may be not wanting to pursue a career in the horse industry. They may be pursuing a career, they may be going to school to pursue a career in something else, but they're very good riders and they enjoy doing the catch riding. Or they may be having turned 18, but they don't feel they're ready to be a professional. They need more riding time. They need more skill sets. They realize that they are too youthful to actually become a professional. All of these people would therefore fall into the shamateur. But is this a negative? Well, for the person who needs the points on the horse who has injured themselves, you can say, well, you know what, if you've injured yourself and you can't ride your own horse, then, having somebody else stay on the horse to gain the points seems kind of unfair. However, under the rulings of Hunter, this is allowed because it is the horse accumulates the points, not the horse rider combination. So it's completely legal. The only time it becomes illegal is if you're paying somebody above 18 under today's rules and regulations to ride said horse. Now that seems strangely, it is illegal because now they run into the realm of it being a professional. And then the other person may say, well, that's hardly fair. If one person who's riding their own horse is riding another horse for their friend, but now they have to buy added clothing. They have added expenses of travel time. They have added expenses of dry cleaning. And then the next person says, but then they get the benefit of a second horse and the extra coaching that they're not paying for. So you see, this takes us round and round and round. At the end of the day, I don't think that it's a conflict that can be really easily circumvented. I don't think that our industry can really get over that. And I don't think we can get on without it. And I'll tell you why. When you are a talented junior rider, you're 11 or 12, you look like you have promise, you're 9, you look like you have promise, people see you have promise, but you can afford one pony. So the only way to get better is to ride more. In today's day and age, seldom are there extra horses around of the quality or the caliber of the training, or even just for cost of boarding, that good kids these days can ride more, even if they want to, even if they want to hang out at the barn all day. So now they're going to ride, and the trainer is going to say, well, I'm a little too big to ride this pony, so it's great. We're going to have that kid ride the pony. The kid gets better. And the more rides they get, the more training time they get, the more coaching they get, the better they get. And since they only have funds for one horse, it's a great way to now maybe make a future professional and maybe make a future Olympian, let's say. Okay, so in that respect, if we're going to say that about juniors, then the day they turn 18, that doesn't give them like a magical adulthood. If they're going to university and they still have an active show schedule with their one horse and they want to do riding school coaching, so they want to go and they want to do coaching at a riding school, technically that makes them a professional, even though the skill sets that they would learn teaching others to ride at a lower level only cements the quality of their own training, their own riding, and if they ever did want to become a professional, it teaches them how to teach. In Canada, we used to have a program whereby you could retain your amateur status if you, not riding, but if you taught up to a certain amount of hours per week, and I believe the number was 10 or 12 hours per week, you were still considered an amateur. This was great, and I have to tell you, when we had that, I think we put out better coaches at the lower levels, because now suddenly kids who had weird schedules with showing could actually have a part-time job to afford some of their riding endeavors. They learned how to teach, and they learned how to do so with a volume of time, but they certainly weren't professionals capable of taking people to the A circuit. The other thing is, it also allowed adults who were magnificent teachers, who maybe wanted to teach riding school or grassroots level, or perhaps even teach people for the B circuit while having a full-time job of their own. But being excellent at it and being able to go and do some lessons, offer their expertise, knowing that they did not want to run a show barn, knowing that they did not have the abilities to train professionally horses up to, let's say, double A circuit, triple A circuit, 150 ring, whatever. Knowing that, but that they could offer time, they could offer guidance, they could understand where the person was coming from, but without having to be an upper level or a Teague rider. Now, if they, with their little 10 hours a week, could do that, they could still go to a B circuit show or a grassroots show and still show as an amateur. Or if they wanted to go themselves and gain the experience of showing at an A show, they were still amateurs. This actually, to me, was a far better system because now you had people who kept learning. They weren't capped. They didn't go and write a test and give an example lesson only of how they would teach. They actually had to real world teach. And they got a payment for it, but of course that allows them the time to do it, because if you say to somebody, oh, you need 20 hours of volunteer teaching, that's vastly different than a year or 5 years or 7 years of 10 hours a week teaching, which you should be paid for, because to volunteer like that is very difficult. And I don't know where the desire to keep going would be if you weren't getting paid, really, because you have gas money, you have time, you have other things to do in your life. I think this system was better. So today, people who, let's say, are an adult, and they are capable themselves of riding at the 2'6" level, but they would like to teach riding school up to the 2'6" level, and they are marvelous teachers. And let's say they do this either full-time or they do this part-time 2 or 3 days a week after a workload. They are technically considered professionals and cannot then show themselves in an amateur division, even though, remember, they cannot technically ride themselves, their own skill level past the 2'6". They're not passing themselves off as a marvelous trainer, a marvelous rider. They simply want to do the teaching at a level that they understand, they're great at. And quite frankly, the upper level trainers don't have the time to do, even if they had the desire. We need these people, but denying them on one front and encouraging them on the other. So now we have a legion of trainers who have no practice, really, other than having taken lessons themselves, coming in, applying for jobs and teaching. But do they have the skill set? Have they got the mileage behind them? And should their own riding be now discouraged? So are we discouraging trainers from coming in because now they can't show themselves? So again, I think our system in Canada was far better when we had that system. Now today, we're denying these people. So I think then, that's a negative, because as riders now, we, as trainers for the riding school, we're really taking away people that we should be encouraging to help us. Then we have the shamateur coaches, okay? And this is a little bit it, okay? So now we have the ones we've just discussed, which technically, if they're getting paid, and yet they still want to ride at a lower level themselves, whether it's B circuit or A circuit, anything with a national body involved, now they're considered shamateurs. But technically, shamateur coaches are those sets of people. It's people who are teaching but not responsible for the care and upkeep of the horse. They just show up for lessons and the showing. And then you have a third, and those who profess they have more experience in riding and coaching and training than they actually do, even if they run their own stable. Because as we all know, anybody can hang a shingle up. Anybody can rent a barn. Anybody can put their name up. Anybody can hang a shingle up. So we have a dilemma there, because how do you know whether the person that you're going to is any one of those, which basically They're not attempting to earn money for something they're not doing. They're earning money for something that they don't actually know a lot about, or they believe because they did it at a small level, but they don't have any practical experience, that, you know, they've turned 18, they've turned 20, whatever, and now they want to open a stable and run a stable and teach people how to ride, but they don't really have the practical experience behind them. And that leads to a myriad of troubles. Or they just show up to a stable and they tell people, oh yes, you know what, I can do this and this and this for you. I can take your horse to this level, especially when we're talking about the A circuit, because if they work full-time elsewhere and they're only showing up for lessons and at the show, then who is doing the preparatory work for the horse to do an A circuit show or even a B circuit these days? Because those shows are taking up more and more time. The horses and the riding is becoming at a greater level. How do you accommodate all that? Well, unfortunately, it's trial and error. And I wish that there was a way that we could ensure that that didn't happen, that people who said they had more knowledge talk a good talk but can't walk the walk, you know, that they, whether they own a stable or whether they just show up for lessons, you know, maybe we would find, you know, we would have a way, but we don't. And I have to be careful here, because when I gave up my stable, I often am asked in to come and do some lessons, or I'm often asked to come in and do a clinic. And I certainly have a lifetime, a plethora of experience in terms of coaching and training. So again, you know, that would kind of put me into the shamateur position, except that I can walk the walk to the talk I talk. But how do you know? So unfortunately, from the perspective of the person who is considering a shamateur coach, you don't know. You don't know until you're in that situation. And this is kind of a sad thing, because at the grassroots and B circuit level, you know, if a person doesn't want to own their own stable because of the volume of time, that doesn't mean that they're not perfectly capable of helping you at the shows and coaching you for the shows. But when they're promising you things and then they don't deliver in terms of riding, or you find out that now they're going to take you to this level, but they only have an understanding of it to this level, but that's not what they declare to you, I know how heartbreaking that is. And that is a shamateur coach. And again, you don't know until you get there. So, you know, that becomes a little bit of a negative for the consumer. It's also very, very bad for the industry, because often those people are making mistakes. And when they make mistakes, then usually it means monetary loss, and sometimes it means physical injury to either horse or rider. So one has to wonder, if we went back to a system where people were allowed, you know, X amount of time to remain amateurs and develop their own skills, and were encouraged to train with others rather than simply become professionals too early, let's say, would that help? I don't know, but that is something I think as an industry we have to discover. Then we also have the professional riders. Quote, quote. So now we have riders who are basically traveling salesmen. You are boarding at a facility. Maybe your trainer doesn't ride, but does lessons. There isn't a good junior that you know, so now you're going to hire in somebody who's a traveling salesman. So if they run their own business, they're going to bill you, you're going to pay them. They are going to charge you whatever taxes, whatever, and that's their job. You can hire them, fire them. If they're amateur riders that are coming to aid you, and they've been asked in to ride your horse to either fix a problem or maintain a level of training on it because you're away. And let's say the trainer, it's a previous student, and the trainer really enjoys the way they ride. They know they do a good job. Are you worthy of payment in that respect? Because now you are a shamateur, you know, and whether you're a junior or a true shamateur over 18, you know, this is a really hard situation, because you're traveling. There's always a risk when you get on a horse, doesn't matter what it is, a physical injury. You have time management, you have money management for things like repair of clothing, dry cleaning, all that kind of stuff, same as you would at the show. So is that person really a professional rider? Well, I'll tell you what, if they're doing it and just coming to you and driving around, then they are doing the job of a professional. And if you are hiring them in because you can't afford to be at an A circuit stable or a B circuit stable or any kind of stable where they have an in-house coach or rider, then you're inviting in a legion of shamateur, amateur, whatever you want to call it, riders. That's up to you. Whether you pay them or not, that's up to you. The quality of the person you choose, that's up to you. Sometimes trainers at an upper level stable will say, you know what, they may not have the time themselves, or they may have a working student, which is a whole other realm. We'll get into it on another video. But they may say to you, listen, there is so-and-so, and we need them to ride that horse because it does need technical amateur mileage. The person is an amateur, technically. But you will be expected to give them a gratuity of some sort. And so maybe that comes in the form of gift card or whatever. In that respect, they are sticking under the rules, basically, of an amateur and solving the problem. And sometimes those professionals need that type of amateur or shamateur in order to keep the other client happy and safe, because maybe they themselves are not the greatest rider. They need the horse to do the amateur division to get not the perfection of the professional ride. So they still need some mistakes, but they need an amateur who, let's say, keeps their leg on at all times versus an amateur who gets to the base drop, takes their leg off and drops in front of the fence, and the horse learns to stop. So sometimes trainers are doing this and using the shamateur specifically in order to keep the entire industry safe and sound. So basically in this video, I know that this is long and drawn out, and I'm sorry for that. I think I've gone over pretty much everything on the shamateur. At the end of the day, my personal opinion is that unless rules change, we need to allow some of this in when it's on a positive, to encourage riders to become better, to encourage low-level trainers to seek further assistance, to keep people at a lower level learning at a better level. I am not saying that somebody who earns a full income doing this should not be considered a professional, but I think the definitions of what is a professional at each level and at each level of showing needs to be redefined. I don't know that this is going to be done anytime soon in North America, and I don't know that really when you open that can of worms, you're going to have so many people that are plus for it and so many people that are inherently against it. I think maybe it's better left alone. But today, that is our technical explanation and definitions of the shamateur amateur, the shamateur junior, I guess, and the shamateur professional. I hope that you found this video of some value. Please, again, subscribe if you have, and I look forward to seeing you